Has web development become difficult? Learning the web your own way with Raymond Camden.
All right, so good afternoon, good morning, everybody, and welcome to kind of like my take on if web development has become a bit hard to learn. And essentially, my focus on is how in the heck do we learn this stuff? How do we keep up, etc. And this is going to be really kind of focused on what has worked for me, what are the things that I've kind of discovered about how I learn, and hopefully you could take some things from this to apply to your learning and to kind of help you work with the web. I will say that the biggest thing that I have learned in the last very many years I've been doing this is that there's absolutely no one way to learn. And certainly every single person out there is going to have their own particular things that work well for them. And even when you figure out kind of like what works well for you, things can totally change depending on what day of the week it is and what you have going on, and more so. So what I have tried to do when I kind of look at all the different ways of learning is to kind of realize what works best for me and how to maximize that. So I may not have the choice in terms of like the best way for me. So I try to maximize what I have. Now, I kind of began with a simple theory that, why bother learning? I should just kind of sling some code because certainly nothing could go wrong with that strategy, right? And I kind of learned this when I wrote my very first program a very long time ago. I was maybe 7 or 8, maybe 9 or 10 years old when my mother's employer wanted her to learn this newfangled computer type stuff. They gave her an Apple IIe, and for some crazy reason, when they gave her this hardware to learn on, they gave her a bunch of games. So my mom had the computer for maybe 30 seconds or so before I took it from her, and I played the games and just went kind of crazy. And at some point during that process, I saw this old movie called Tron, and I decided that's what I was going to do because it made programming so cool. So I got this wonderful lime green book that came with the Apple IIe, and I was going to learn how to program in BASIC. All right, and BASIC is pretty simple. If you've never seen an example before, there's a very short example on screen there. And one of the big things about BASIC is that every line has to have a line number, and you kind of have to plan out your code such that the line numbers go up in order. And it was not fun, but that's how I learned, and I enjoyed learning it back in the day. So if you can look at that program on screen there, it's all of 2 lines of code, maybe 30 characters or so. It's extremely small. And I typed this in and I got an error, and I apologize if that's a bit blurry, but that last bit there is saying that there's a syntax error on line 10. And based on my memory, and it's been 30 plus years, I swear I just spent like hours just staring at this, and what should have been an incredibly simple program wasn't working. Little was I aware that this would be my life going forward. But yeah, I was just at a complete stop still on my very first program. And that's when I eventually said, let me actually go back to the docs and maybe look at the text that comes immediately after what I just looked at. And I noticed this little bit of information, this little tiny thing that says, remember, each line must be terminated by pressing the return key. And I went back, I looked at my program, and my program looked exactly right. It looked exactly like what I saw in the book, because I made it match exactly what was in the book by hitting my space bar and making the cursor wrap all the way to the next line instead of actually hitting the enter key. When I did that, miraculously, I had a running program and everything worked perfectly. So the good news is that that was it. I learned to read the docs. I never had any problems with programming ever again. And it was all downhill from there. Okay, so not exactly. I have definitely had to spend a lot of time learning, a lot of time failing, a lot of time making mistakes. And what I want to kind of go into now is, some of these options for ways to learn. And a lot of this are things that you kind of already know of: books, video courses, classes, and conferences. A topic that I'm calling doing, which will hopefully make a bit more sense once we actually get there. And if that's not vague enough, I also have a category at the end for things that I couldn't really categorize, but that I wanted to include anyway. So let's talk a bit about books. Books, so those things that come from trees. If you've been in web development for more than a hot minute, then you have probably seen this joke, right? So the joke here is that JavaScript has bugs, it has oddities, unlike every other programming language out there. Yeah, let's all make fun of JavaScript because look, here's the book on the left showing all of JavaScript, and here's the book on the right showing just the good parts. Yeah, so one thing you find out if you work in web dev for more than a minute, again, is that you will see the same joke repeated again and again. However, there is something I think that's kind of interesting about this picture, is that when you look at the dates for these books, it's pretty telling. Back when I started web development, around 93, 94 or so, pretty early on, I was still in college. The books that came out back then were like the books on the left. They were Bibles. They were 500, 800 page behemoths of text, and you would pick these things up and you would learn everything over lots and lots of pages. I've actually written books like the one that you see on the left. One thing that's really kind of happened in the computer book industry is that not only are the number of books kind of going down, but the size is going down tremendously. The last book that I worked on, I think clocked in at 80 pages. And I think that's actually a pretty good thing, because instead of these kind of giant behemoth type texts that cover everything, instead you're getting books that are a lot more focused on narrow topics. So in general, I don't necessarily look for books in terms of learning an entire language or an entire platform, but I look for them more to be kind of a second tier, second year, second phase of learning environment where I already know the basics and I need a more focused approach to what I'm doing. So some of the things that I have found with books is that I really prefer to have a physical copy. And again, this is strictly personal, but even though an ebook is a lot more efficient, you can get it a lot quicker, you can order it and have it in like 2 seconds. I have just found that when I'm learning a topic, if I have a PDF open, I'm also going to have Twitter open, I'm going to have Facebook open, I'm not going to be as focused. So I've actually had cases where I've had really, really good ebooks that I found to be super informative. And I've actually gone and bought physical copies because I wanted that physical copy next to me while I'm doing development. Another thing I definitely recommend, and it's kind of really hard to do, but you really want to try your best at actually typing in things while you're reading. I have found that kind of muscle memory really kind of cements what I'm learning, and it could even be something as simple as one simple small function call that all it does is output the current time. I will literally make a file, I'll put that simple function call in there, and I will run that just to see it working, and that physical action of typing something in just kind of helps it sink more into my brain and work better for me. There's probably some neuroscience in there. I'm not a neuroscientist, so I can't say. One thing I'll add is that if you do, if you are okay with ebooks, Safari is kind of the Netflix of computer books. And if you sign up for it, you can get access to pretty much anything out there. It is not cheap. So one of the things you want to do is see if your employer already has a enterprise subscription to it. And that's something that you can consider as a way of kind of quickly grabbing books. Videos are another way of learning. It's something that I've worked on myself. Some of the options you have out there are Safari, again, if you could afford that yearly subscription. Udemy has a great deal of free content as well as Khan Academy, and don't forget to look on YouTube. Also look for things like what we're doing right now. There are certain conferences that run entirely online. There are certain events that will go online. I've noticed that a lot of companies will typically have seminars for their products and things. And while they may be sometimes a bit sales heavy, it's also a great way to learn a particular topic if you don't have an opportunity to pick up a book or go to a conference. You really want to look for options or platforms that have some kind of speed control. I have found that most recorded presentations at the normal speed, I will become distracted. And that's not because I'm super intelligent, it's because I'm easily distractible. So if I can speed up the content, I have to kind of force myself to pay attention in order to learn something. So I definitely kind of give preference to platforms or options out there that let me speed things up a bit. The other one you also want to look for are options with subtitles. And whether or not you have an issue with your hearing, I have found that especially with technical courses, if they say something that, if the speaker says a particular term and says it a bit quickly and it's a technical term, having the subtitles makes it a bit easier to kind of follow along with what they're saying. And obviously, you also want to give preference to places that will actually give you access to the file assets. Now, I'm going to go back to what I said about books in terms of typing things in. But if you don't have time to type things in, or you want assets like images and stuff to help you build projects, give preference to online courses that will give you access to those things while you learn. So classes, certainly much better for focusing. If you are actually paying money and flying or driving to a location and sitting in a room, it's going to be really hard to look at Twitter and Facebook while you're sitting in a class. They're also going to be really good for getting more of the instructor's time. So especially when compared to a conference where you may be one of 200 people in a room, classroom typically will be less than 20 or so people. It's going to be much better to get that one-on-one attention when you get stuck on something. Now, I will say a lot of the online courses will have some way to contact the person who created the content. So you will sometimes have a way to ask some questions, but nothing kind of like beats being in a classroom and being able to just raise your hand. So certainly cost and time is going to be a thing to be concerned about here. The last course that I took, I think, was around $3,000, and that wasn't including the airfare. That's not cheap. It was a 5-day long course, so to me, it was worth that money. And at that time, my employer was paying for it. So it was worth it, but I think your outlay is definitely going to be significantly higher compared to books and online courses in general. I'm going to give a shout out to Big Nerd Ranch. These are the people whose class that I last attended. Extremely deep. They have great locations. They get you out in the woods in a nice place. Well, the classroom's not in the woods, but the location is out in the woods for the one I attended, and had really good instructors and also very good course material. And it was one of the best classes that I have ever sat in. So conferences, and this is kind of what typically people think of when they think of, I want to go learn something. I love conferences. I attend a lot. I speak at a lot. I like them. They are not always the best way to learn new things. They don't suck. That's 99% a joke and only 1% truth. They do also have the cost and travel type issue, especially if you don't live in a place that has a lot of conferences. I live in Louisiana. I don't live in New Orleans. So if I want to go to a conference, I am getting on an airplane and I am traveling to San Francisco or Dallas or some major location, and I'm paying for the airfare and I'm paying for the hotel. They're also kind of easy to not commit to. So unlike a class where you're sitting in a room for a couple of days or a day or whatever, in a conference, you choose what sessions you're going to attend. And if you don't like it or if you get bored, it's kind of trivial to just kind of run up and leave it. And I'll also say that the social aspect that everyone kind of raves about, hey, you can meet all these new people, that may not work well for you. If you are shy, if you have a problem being surrounded by a lot of people, then a conference may not be the best option for you. Even though I do like meeting new people, again, depending on the day of the week, there's times when I don't want to be surrounded by 1,000 people. So, and in those cases, I'm not really learning very well. So I know I complained a lot, but one of the things I found about conferences is that they're great for technical introductions. So what I mean by that is that I have picked up a lot of new things at conferences where in the hour-long session that I was there, I absolutely did not learn everything about X, Y, or Z, but I discovered X, Y, or Z, or I discovered some new concept and I got inspired to go back and learn more about it. I know that when I give presentations, one of the things I really try to do is not throw a laundry list of technology at you or concepts, whatever. What I really want you to do is get very excited about what I'm talking about. I find my excitement about a topic, I get you excited about it, and I hope that you go back home and then spend the time at a slower pace to learn more about whatever I was talking about. Now, one of the more interesting ways of learning is by what I call doing. That's actually just writing some code. And I'm not talking about winging it per se. I'm talking about, actually trying to learn while writing. And a couple things I like to point out here, is that a great way to learn something is to build something that already exists. One of the things you hear is that, oh, you should never repeat code. Don't repeat yourself. If there's an open source library for something, don't write that code, just grab it, npm install it, whatever. That's certainly true for building a production application, but like when I'm learning, I absolutely build things that already exist. The best example of this is a blog. I would never write my own blog software. I did about 20 years or so ago, but now I would never do that. But when I am learning something, I will build a blog because I already know what features a blog has. I don't have to sit there and think about what I should build. I know what a blog is. I know what to build. And instead, I focus on how am I going to build this blog using Node.js or Go or Python or whatever. Certainly look at existing code that's out there, and on the web, we've had that for a very, very long time with View Source. Get inspired by that and maybe even use that as a way of saying, here's some existing code. I'm going to recreate it with my own code, but use the existing code as kind of a template for what I'll build. And lastly, build something stupid. I build a crap ton of really, really stupid sample apps, mainly because it's fun and I'm writing code. So I absolutely don't let sense or, anything intelligent get in the way of me kind of writing some code and trying something. So a great example of this, back when I was doing a lot of Apache Cordova sample applications and blogging, I noticed that one of the APIs that Cordova supported was looking at the contacts on your phone. So I had this idea where I thought, I like the fact that like when my son calls me, I get a picture of him because I took a picture and I assigned it to his contact address. And for everybody else, you get kind of a generic, either initials like an iOS or something else generic. So I created an Apache Cordova application that when you ran it, it would look at all the contacts on your phone. And for every single contact that did not have a picture, it would go out and hit an API that generated random cat pictures. And it would take that random cat picture and assign it to those contacts. Now, this was stupid. I mean, this is, something I didn't even bother submitting to the App Store, but I freaking loved it. I learned more about the Contacts API. I built my demo, and even more fun, I keep forgetting that I ran this example, and I'll get a phone call or I'll get an email and I'll see the cat picture. And for like 10 seconds, I'm like, how in the hell did that cat picture oh yeah, I built a dumb demo for that. So again, you have dumb ideas like this, please go ahead, build it, get some practice in. Another great way of doing this is to actually do coding exercises. So one example of this is Node School, and don't let the name fool you. It is Node School, but they have regular JavaScript, they have source control, even HTML and Markdown. They have a great set of free courses. All of this is installed at the command line. When you run it, you get a simple menu of various exercises. You select one, you're given an exercise, and they don't really care how you write the code. You simply, do your best, you output a result, and then the command line program will actually test your code to see if it outputs the right thing. Again, this is 100% free and a great way to kind of actually go through a, write this code, see if it works, and learn while you do it type scenario. Another one that I really enjoy, and this is great timing because it's going to launch in 3 days or so, is Advent of Code. Advent of Code is a series of code challenges from December 1st to December 25th, where they'll give you a challenge and you write a solution in any language at all. And it always starts off kind of simple and fun, and I won't read off the screen here, but essentially what this particular challenge is saying is that given open and closed parentheses representing moving up and down an elevator, if I give you a string of parentheses, just tell me what floor it's on. So that's pretty simple. Here is my kind of low-tech solution, and they don't really care what language you use. I use JavaScript, obviously, because it's perfect. And I wrote this, and I had fun. And again, it starts off really simple. And then it kind of goes apeshit crazy deep in terms of stuff like this, where you have in sets of packages that you have to divide evenly among 3 different rows in Santa's sleigh. But you have to make sure that the first row has the least amount of packages so that Santa has room. And oh, by the way, I'm going to make up this thing called quantum entanglement, which involves the product of the weights. And yeah, it gets a bit crazy. And typically what happens at that point, where I have zero idea of how to solve that particular solution, I'll actually go on their Reddit. I'll find a solution in a different language like Python, and I'll do my best to rewrite that in JavaScript. So I'm still learning, I'm still getting some practice, and I'm still having a bit of fun. Some more options, JS Warrior and Warrior JS. These are both kind of game-based ways where you write code to solve a particular problem, and in both cases, it's kind of RPG-ish, fantasy involved. JS Warrior is a bit old. I don't think it's updated anymore, but Warrior JS came out, I believe, just a few months ago, and it's pretty darn neat. Another one by Rebecca Murphy is called JS Assessment. And what this is a large set of tests that are running against particular functions that you have to write and make the test pass. And these are all functions that involve things, for example, in arrays, writing your own implementation of index of, sum, remove, etc. But it's kind of fun because you can go through this, you write your implementation, you rerun the test, and you see them gradually pass as you work through it. This particular project hasn't been updated in a while, but you can definitely still learn it and still work with it. And I'll also say that I have a couple of more options in this particular category on this article I wrote about 2 years ago, and this slide deck will be shared, so you can grab that link later. So I'm going to wrap up kind of quickly with just a few more things that didn't kind of fit nicely into other categories. Do not forget the MDN web docs. For a long time, I was under the assumption that it was only for Firefox. That is absolutely not true. Everything that I need to learn about web development, I pretty much start at the MDN web docs. And in Google, at least, and in other places as well, if you do MDN space and then whatever you're doing, it will lead you directly to those docs. For me, this is me looking up which darn array methods return a new array versus changing the original. I can never remember that. I will also point out there are a set of newsletters. Brian works on one and I work on one from Cooper Press, where once a week you will get a nice list of links of just kind of interesting stuff. And I absolutely do not have time to follow all of those links. Most of the time I scan the titles and I'll read maybe one or two. But if you're looking for a way to kind of keep up with the latest demos, the latest features, the latest frameworks, etc., sign up for these newsletters. They're all free and they're all, I think, pretty interesting. Very last tip I'll share, and I think this is really, really important, is that don't forget that the more that you help others, the more that you learn. I've been doing web development for a very, very long time, and I still feel like I know next to nothing. One of the things that I try to remember is that I at least know a few things. And if I could help, someone learn one particular thing, then I'm helping the web development community grow stronger every day. If you have been doing this for one day, then you already know more than people who have not started yet. The more that you can go out there and help by either, speaking at meetups, or heck, even just talking to your coworkers about what you've learned and what you've struggled with, the more that you just help people learn and the more that you help cement your own knowledge as well.
Thanks for watching.